Ellie the Elephant in the Room Chapter 1. The office elephant. The alarm blared its unforgiving siren song, and Charlie jolted awake. Another Monday morning, another day of the daily grind. He trudged through his usual routine: shower, breakfast, and the soul-crushing commute to his office job. Little did he know that this Monday was about to take a turn for the utterly bizarre. Charlie reached the office building, a nondescript glass and steel structure, home to the accounting firm where he'd toiled for the past 3 years. He swiped his ID card, the familiar beep granting him access to the elevator. The doors slid open, and he stepped into the lift, joining the throng of equally unenthusiastic colleagues. As they ascended, the usual awkward silence prevailed, broken only by the occasional throat clearing or muffled cough. The elevator reached the 12th floor, the doors parted, and Charlie stepped out into the familiar gray and beige expanse of the office. He made his way to his cubicle, a beige box with a view of the brick wall across the street. Setting his briefcase down, he slumped into his chair, preparing for another day of spreadsheets and invoices. But something was amiss. The office seemed oddly quiet, and there was a strange tension in the air. Charlie glanced around, trying to pinpoint the source of the unease. That's when he saw it. Or rather, her. An elephant. A full-grown African elephant was standing in the middle of his boss's office, her trunk wrapped around Mr. Perkins's prized golf trophy. Charlie blinked, rubbed his eyes, and blinked again. The elephant was still there. It was not a hallucination, not a dream. It was an actual elephant in his actual office. His heart pounded in his chest. He looked around at his colleagues. They were all sitting at their desks, staring at their computer screens, seemingly oblivious to the giant pachyderm in their midst. Guys? Charlie stammered, his voice barely above a whisper. Is anyone else seeing this? No one responded. They just kept typing away, their fingers flying across the keyboards. Charlie stood up, his legs feeling like jelly. He cautiously approached the elephant. She looked at him with gentle eyes, her trunk still entwined with the golf trophy. How did you get in here? Charlie asked, his voice trembling. The elephant simply blinked at him. Charlie took a deep breath and turned to his colleagues again. Seriously, people, there's an elephant in Mr. Perkins's office, he shouted. This time, a few heads turned, but their expressions remained blank. They shrugged, muttered something about deadlines, and went back to their work. Charlie was dumbfounded. Was he going crazy? Was this some elaborate prank? Or had the world finally gone completely mad? He decided to take matters into his own hands. He cautiously approached the elephant and gently patted her trunk. The elephant let out a soft rumble and dropped the golf trophy. Charlie picked it up and placed it back on its pedestal. He then gestured towards the door. Come on, girl, he said, let's get you out of here. To his surprise, the elephant followed him obediently. They walked through the office, past the oblivious employees, and into the elevator. Charlie pressed the button for the ground floor, his heart pounding in his chest. The elevator doors opened, and they stepped out into the lobby. The security guard looked up from his newspaper, his eyes widening in disbelief. Is that an elephant? He stammered. Charlie nodded, unable to speak. The security guard fumbled for his phone, presumably to call the police or animal control. But before he could dial, the elephant lumbered out of the building and into the bustling city street. Charlie watched her go, a mix of relief and bewilderment washing over him. He turned back to the security guard, who was still staring at the spot where the elephant had disappeared. Did that really just happen? Charlie asked. The security guard shook his head, his face pale. I don't know, man, he said. I don't know. Charlie returned to his cubicle, his mind reeling. He sat down, staring at his computer screen, unable to focus on his work. The elephant was gone, but the memory of her presence lingered. He couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. There was something strange going on, something connected to him. And he had a feeling that this wouldn't be the last time he'd encounter an elephant in an unexpected place. Chapter 2. Subway Safari. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Charlie mechanically completed his tasks, his mind still buzzing with the morning's encounter. With every ring of the phone or tap on his shoulder, he half expected to see the elephant again, its trunk reaching for a stapler or a coffee mug. Thankfully, the pachyderm remained absent, but the unsettling feeling of its presence lingered. Finally, the clock struck 5, and Charlie was free. He grabbed his briefcase and bolted out of the office, eager to escape the confines of the building. The subway station was his sanctuary, a place of predictable routines and familiar faces. Or so he thought. As he descended the escalator, the familiar rumbling of the approaching train echoed through the tunnel. The platform was packed, a sea of tired commuters clutching newspapers and smartphones. Charlie squeezed his way through the crowd, searching for a spot near the doors. The train screeched to a halt, and the doors slid open. A wave of people poured out, and Charlie braced himself for the onslaught of boarding passengers. He was jostled and nudged, and just when he thought he'd secured a spot, a large, gray mass blocked his view. Charlie blinked. He couldn't believe his eyes. Standing right in front of him, amidst the hustle and bustle of the rush hour crowd, was the elephant. She was calmly holding onto a pole with her trunk, her massive body swaying gently with the rhythm of the train. A wave of panic washed over Charlie. His heart pounded in his chest, and his breath hitched. He scanned the faces around him, expecting to see shock, fear, or at the very least, mild amusement. But there was none. People were simply going about their business, reading their books, scrolling through their phones, as if having an elephant on the subway was the most normal thing in the world. A man in a pinstripe suit even offered the elephant his seat. She declined with a polite nod of her head, her trunk still firmly wrapped around the pole. Charlie was losing his grip on reality. Was he the only one who saw the elephant? Was he hallucinating? He desperately wanted to scream, to run, to do anything to break the spell of normalcy that seemed to have fallen over the subway car. But he couldn't. He was frozen in place, his eyes glued to the elephant. He watched as she gracefully navigated the crowd, her trunk occasionally reaching out to steady herself or gently nudge someone out of her way. The train pulled into Charlie's stop, and the doors slid open. The elephant lumbered out, followed by a stream of oblivious commuters. Charlie stumbled out behind them, his legs feeling like rubber. He watched as the elephant made her way up the escalator, her massive body dwarfing the other passengers. He followed her, his mind racing. Where was she going? What was she doing? And most importantly, why was she following him? The elephant led him through the busy streets, her trunk occasionally reaching out to sample some fruit from a vendor's stall or pluck a flower from a window box. People smiled and waved at her, seemingly unfazed by her presence. Charlie, on the other hand, was on the verge of a breakdown. He felt like he was in a bizarre dream, a surreal alternate reality where elephants rode the subway and strolled through city streets. Finally, the elephant stopped in front of his apartment building. She looked at him with her gentle eyes, her trunk raised in a silent farewell. Then, she turned and lumbered away, disappearing into the twilight. Charlie stood there for a long moment, his heart still pounding in his chest. He slowly climbed the stairs to his apartment, his mind buzzing with questions. He had no answers, only a growing sense of unease and a nagging suspicion that his life was about to get a whole lot more complicated. He unlocked his door and stepped into his apartment, the familiar surroundings offering little comfort. He collapsed onto his couch, his head spinning. The elephant was gone, but the memory of her presence lingered, a constant reminder that the world was not as it seemed. Charlie closed his eyes, trying to make sense of it all. But the more he thought about it, the more confused he became. He was an ordinary man caught in an extraordinary situation, and he had no idea how to deal with it. He drifted off to sleep, his dreams filled with elephants and subway cars and bewildered commuters. When he woke up the next morning, he half expected to find an elephant in his shower. But the bathroom was empty, the only sound the dripping of the faucet. Charlie sighed. He had a feeling that this was just the beginning. The elephant was out there somewhere, and he had a feeling that she wasn't done with him yet. He braced himself for the next encounter, wondering where and when it would happen. And most importantly, he wondered why. Chapter 3. Jim Jumbo. The morning after his subway safari, Charlie woke up with a renewed sense of determination. He was going to take control of his life, get back into shape, and maybe, just maybe, figure out what was going on with the elephant. So, he laced up his sneakers, grabbed his gym bag, and headed to the local fitness center. He hadn't been in months, and the prospect of sweating alongside lycra-clad fitness enthusiasts filled him with a sense of dread. But he was determined to push through it. As he entered the gym, the familiar smell of sweat and disinfectant assaulted his nostrils. He scanned the room, taking in the rows of treadmills, elliptical machines, and weightlifting equipment. He spotted an empty treadmill in the corner and made a beeline for it. He climbed onto the machine, adjusted the settings, and started walking. He gradually increased the speed, his heart rate quickening, his muscles protesting. He was starting to get into the rhythm when he heard a familiar rumbling sound behind him. Charlie turned his head, and his jaw dropped. Standing on the treadmill next to him, her trunk wrapped around the handles, was the elephant. She was walking at a leisurely pace, her massive body swaying gently with each step. Charlie's eyes widened in disbelief. This was getting ridiculous. First the office, then the subway, and now the gym. Was there nowhere he could escape this elephant? He glanced around, expecting to see the other gym goers gawking at the elephant or running for the exits. But to his surprise, they were all going about their workouts, seemingly oblivious to the giant pachyderm in their midst. A woman on the elliptical next to the elephant even gave her a friendly smile and a thumbs up. The elephant returned the gesture with a nod of her head. Charlie was flabbergasted. Was he the only one who saw the elephant? Was the whole world going mad? He felt like he was trapped in a bizarre reality show, a twisted version of Candid Camera, where he was the unwitting star. He tried to ignore the elephant and focus on his workout, but it was impossible. Her presence was too overwhelming, too absurd. He kept glancing at her, his mind racing. How was she even managing to stay on the treadmill? Wouldn't her weight break the machine? And then, as if on cue, the treadmill beneath the elephant started to creak and groan. The belt slowed down, and the machine began to shake violently. The elephant looked down at her feet, a look of mild concern on her face. Suddenly, with a loud crack, the treadmill gave way. The belt snapped, and the elephant tumbled off, landing on the floor with a thud that shook the entire gym. Chaos erupted. People screamed and scrambled away, their workouts forgotten. The gym staff rushed over, their faces pale with shock. Charlie stood frozen in place, his heart pounding in his chest. The elephant slowly got to her feet, looking around at the commotion she had caused. She seemed genuinely apologetic, her trunk drooping sadly. Charlie took a deep breath and approached her. He patted her trunk gently, trying to reassure her. The gym manager hurried over, his face red with anger. "What on earth is going on here?" he sputtered. "How did an elephant get into my gym?" Charlie shrugged, unable to speak. He had no explanation, no excuse. He just knew that wherever he went, the elephant seemed to follow. The gym manager shook his head in disbelief. He ordered the staff to evacuate the gym and called the authorities. Within minutes, the police and animal control arrived, their sirens wailing. The elephant, sensing the trouble she had caused, obediently followed the animal control officers out of the gym. Charlie watched her go, a mix of relief and sadness washing over him. He left the gym, his workout forgotten. He walked home, his mind reeling. The elephant was gone, but the memory of her presence lingered, a constant reminder that his life had taken a bizarre and unexpected turn. He reached his apartment and let himself in. He collapsed onto his couch, his head spinning. He had no idea what to do, where to turn. He was an ordinary man caught in an extraordinary situation, and he was starting to feel overwhelmed. He closed his eyes, trying to block out the images of the elephant on the treadmill, the broken machine, the panicked gym goers. But the images kept flashing before his eyes, a surreal montage of his increasingly bizarre life. He drifted off to sleep, his dreams filled with elephants and treadmills and bewildered gym managers. When he woke up the next morning, he felt a sense of dread. He knew that the elephant was out there somewhere, waiting for him. And he had a feeling that their next encounter would be even more unexpected, even more absurd.